Welcome back to A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you search Locked On Sports Atlanta. I am Mark Zinno. Follow me on Twitter at Mark Zinno, MarkZinno. Of course, follow our entire station at Locked On ATL. You'll see all and hear all the great shows with A to Z, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Chanitra Batiste. Of course, Grant McCauley has our Braves postcast, along with Locked On Falcons with Aaron Freeman, Locked On Hawks with Brad Rowland. The entire Locked On Sports Atlantic studio cast here, man. It's a great lineup. I hope you guys check out all the shows here, and we appreciate all the support. We're building something really special. This has been a lot of fun, and we're glad that you guys are along for the ride. So share that you listen and let people know where you can find us, and certainly share all the links that you guys see on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, whatever it may be. Keep directing people to Locked On Sports Atlanta for some great Atlanta sports content, and we appreciate you guys doing so. Going to get to the Kentucky Derby. I don't know how much of a horse racing fan you guys are, but if you're not, I'm going to break down this race for you so you can understand what happened and why this long shot that won was just so dramatic and so impressive because of so many different things that had gone on. So we'll do a little bit of that. I'm a huge horse racing aficionado, so I've been so my entire life. I grew up down the block from Belmont Park as a kid, and so I've been around horse racing my entire life, even when I was a kid. And I've always had a love for it and an appreciation for it. So the Derby, we'll get the Preakness here coming up in another week or 2 weeks now, and then you'll get the Belmont coming up in the first weekend in June. So a little bit more on that coming up here in just a bit. But Falcons rookie mini camp starting this coming weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we'll get our first look at some of the players and the names that we had just, brought here. Obviously, eyes are going to be on Drake London. Eyes are going to be on Desmond Ridder, right? Everyone's going to follow those two guys around. And it doesn't matter that Ridder was a third-round pick. And it's one of those deals where it's a quarterback and it's a first-round pick. So they're going to get a ton of attention. My eyes are going to go towards one player in particular, and that is Troy Andersen, the linebacker from Montana State. Now, I didn't watch any Montana State football. I'm not even going to sit here and lie to you and tell you I did, but I am going to sit here and tell you that I am curious to see how they want to use this kid, how they want to use this young man, what they want to do with him from a position standpoint. Where is he play in relation to Deion Jones? Where does he play in relation to, what Foye did last year for this team? So there's a lot to look at. My big thing with Troy Andersen, as he was taken with the pick that the Falcons had in the second round, you start to look at some of the other names that they passed up on, right? And this is honestly what we're going to remember years down the road. When the Falcons had Troy Andersen, there were still a lot of names out there that a lot of people knew and a lot of people were familiar with. And those were names that a lot of people wanted the Falcons to take. Fans wanted them to take. And I'm not saying you should do what fans want you to do. That's not the issue. But when you look at, names that were available for them, whether it's Nakobe Dean, who was obviously very popular, you look at other names that were out there from players who they could have taken to help their team, whether it's like a running back like Brian Robinson Jr., who was available, obviously a big running back in college. You start to look at guys who played in other major conferences. Christian Harris was there from Alabama. He's another inside linebacker. You start to look at all of these guys that were available and were on the board at the time, and the Falcons passed on him in favor of Troy Andersen. Those are ultimately going to be the things, if those guys blow up, you're going to grade Troy Andersen against if he doesn't work out. And that's why I'm curious to see what they saw so much in Troy Andersen that he is going to be such a pivotal part of this defense that they expended a second-round pick on him and made him essentially one of the top, 60 players in this draft. Like that's an expensive piece of draft capital that the Falcons used on a guy that theoretically they could have used with other players and other guys who may have had a bigger impact. And that's generally what we do with the draft, right? We look at guys who draft, he was available. I know that's sort of revisionist history, but unfortunately, that's kind of just the way it goes. That's how front offices, in retrospect, in hindsight, being 2020, get graded, and they get graded basically on whoever was left on the board behind them. Why we're always reminded about Tom Brady being a 6th-round pick and Russell Wilson being a 3rd-round pick because, well, guess what? A lot of teams pass on those dudes a lot of times. And if Nakobe Dean ends up being a huge star, people in this state are never going to let the Falcons live it down. If he ends up having a massive career, they'll never let him live it down because he was there and available, and the Falcons walked away from him in favor of a kid from Montana State. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's kind of just the way this thing is going to be judged. So I'm more curious to see him than anybody else and how they're going to put him in this defense. Obviously, I want to see how they're going to use Drake London and what he's going to be able to do. And I'll bring it back to gambling for a minute, as I often do. You guys know that. But Drake London's receiving yards prop and touchdown prop I caught wind of over the weekend. And Drake London's receiving yards this year is over under 764.5, and his touchdowns are over under 4.5. I would like to think that he can get over that 764, but I just don't know. In reality, you have to wonder how he's going to be used, and moreover, how Kyle Pitts is going to be intertwined with him. I mean, is Kyle Pitts going to be lining up split out like people have expected? I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not saying he should or he shouldn't. I'm not smart enough one way or another to dissect which is a better offensive way to use him, at least not at this point in time, because I haven't seen a sample set with them on the field at the same time. Nobody has. So I know the coaches have an idea of what they want to do, but I'm not smart enough to figure out right now which is the better way to go. And when you have these two guys as targets, you got to get them the ball as often as you can. So I don't know how I feel about him going over 760 and at 4.5 yards on the year, especially if he's not 100% healthy. He may have injuries, whatever. I really do like going over his touchdowns of 4.5 because that's sort of what I've seen Arthur Smith do before with big-bodied wide receivers. Jump balls in the end zone to A.J. Brown. He did that routinely. Fades in the corner of the end zone to A.J. Brown where he could just outsize his defender, and I expect to see that a lot. I don't know if he'll have 800 yards receiving, but I feel like 5 touchdowns is in the cards for Drake London. So I would do that, and it's juiced heavily to the over. If you follow that sort of thing, you're paying $1.40 on a dollar wager to take the over. So it's a little bit rich for my blood, and I understand why, because I think that's the way Drake London is going to be used in this offense. And then, of course, we're all curious to see how much Desmond Ridder is used, how much time he gets with the ones, and if this really is going to be an open competition heading into training camp. So we'll start to find all that out coming up here this weekend when they open rookie mini camp. All right, coming up next, the Kentucky Derby, the long shot of all long shots, and why I would have rather had a ticket to the Kentucky Derby than hit lotto. I'll explain that coming up next. It's A to Z right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll be right back.